So I'm going to ask, to start off, I'm going to ask you a question. I'd like you to raise your hand if you've seen a movie featuring the superhero Iron Man. Okay, maybe about half of you. Okay, good. So why am I talking about movies? Aren't I here to talk about Google in the future? Well, the reason I bring up Iron Man is because if you've seen the movie Iron Man, you've seen Jarvis.
Jarvis, you there?
Patch yourself, essa.
Gauge heads-up display.
Check.
Report all preferences from home interface.
We'll do so.
So Jarvis is Tony Stark's incredibly knowledgeable, very personalized, almost human-like personal computer assistant. And it not only helps him answer questions, but it also anticipates his needs and potential dangers. It also makes suggestions for how he can navigate his day, and it also enables him to take action. Now, when you're Iron Man, of course, taking action could be fighting superheroes or fixing a jet engine in midair. But the reason I bring up Jarvis is because I think Jarvis is what the future of Google will look like. So imagine Google as this incredibly helpful computer assistant that can not only answer your questions, but anticipate your needs, make relevant suggestions, and then enable you to take action on them. It would be pretty cool, right? It would be like having a computer assistant for your personal life. So if we start to think about some of the applications that could make in travel, let's say, let's think about sitting on the sofa with your spouse at home, and you start thinking about your next vacation with your family, let's say. And in the future, maybe you're wearing some kind of contact lens or a version of Google Glass or whatever it is. And you just ask out loud, Google, are there direct flights to Disney World from here? And Google could just say back to you very simply,
yes, TAM has 2 nonstop flights per day from Sao Paulo to Orlando, Florida. Do you have specific travel dates in mind, or are you flexible?
well, I'm pretty flexible, but I think I want something for maybe 6 days over a weekend sometime in the next few months.
The cheapest fare for that criteria in the next 3 months would be $795 departing Sao Paulo on Saturday the 14th of September and returning on Thursday the 19th. Shall I book tickets for you, Ian, and the kids?
Thanks, but not just yet. But could you look into hotels that are maybe within a mile of the park that are under $400 and are kind of family friendly?
Certainly. Here is the list. I only pulled ones with pools because you usually prefer those. Shall I research ground transportation options as well?
He does know me so well. I do need a pool when I travel. So you get a feel for how this can go, right? So it's not just planning your travel. Picture your everyday life. Let's say your coworker just had a baby and you want to find the perfect gift. You can have this kind of conversation to help you find the right gift and buy it. Perhaps you just bought a new car and you need new car insurance. This is the other kind of interaction you can have. Or Bruno Mars is coming to town and you need help getting tickets. So lots of actual real-life applications. So as a user, you're probably like, this is very cool. I'm very excited about what this future can hold. And then as an advertiser, you're like, holy crap, how do I adjust my marketing strategies to that future? And you're right to be wondering, because consumer expectations are continuing to rise. And as Gerd talked about earlier, the technology is increasing at a ridiculous rate. So we all need to keep up. And it's not just Google who is thinking about these kinds of changes. The World Economic Forum, which represents a lot of global companies and thought leaders, has put together a thought on what they think travel will look like in the not-so-distant future. It feels pretty Jarvis-like to me. See what you think.
Imagine you wake up in Frankfurt in the year 2025.
Hi, I'm Ipita, your integrated, proactive, intermodal travel assistant. Your flight has been delayed by 3 hours. To make it on time to your meeting in Brussels, please choose alternative transport. Speed train, arrival at office 2 p.m., all-in costs €800. Or airplane, arrival at office 3:20 p.m., all-in costs €860. Select alternative. Thank you. Booking is confirmed. Here is your mobile combined ticket. Your taxi will arrive in a few minutes. Have a safe journey.
So Apita might not be as sexy or Hollywood name as Jarvis, but you get the idea that this is something that a lot of people are thinking about. So the World Economic Forum tapped into dozens of global companies across travel, transportation, infrastructure, and this is the collective input on where they think the future is going. So not so distant future either, right? They're talking 2025 was this scenario. So now that I've gotten you uncomfortably excited, hopefully, about where the future is going, let me get you more comfortable about where we at Google are today against this Jarvis-like vision. And I want to look at that within the context, the framework that I mentioned earlier about answering, anticipating, suggesting, and enabling. And I also want to take another look at how we're doing with being relevant, being easier, and being more satisfying, because that is the ultimate goal at the end of the day. You want users to walk away satisfied. So let's start at the beginning with answering. It's kind of in our roots. If you remember from 1998, when the Google engine first launched, this is what it looked like, kind of the iconic 10 blue links. Do people remember this very first version? So things have come a long way since 1998, and we've gotten more relevant, better functionality. We have more images. It's much more dynamic. And let me show you an example for the query that I did before I came here. There were certain pieces of data that I just needed to know before I came to Sao Paulo. It's my first time here. So I wanted to know things like the weather, the currency conversion, and what the time difference was so that I could call back home to my kids. And when I asked Google these questions, I didn't just get 10 blue links. Instead, I got very useful packages of information that was very easy to digest and read that showed me what the weather was going to be like for the coming week, what the conversion rates were, and what the time was locally. So you get a feel for the very quick one-box type answers that you can deliver when there is truly one answer to a query. Now, what happens when you have more than one possible relevant answer? So we've adapted differently in that scenario. So when I did this query for tourist attractions in Brazil, you can see that there are multiple tourist attractions here, and it presented in a much more visual page, and this is actually a much more dynamic page as well. So we have this panel on the right-hand side talking about the country, and then along the top, it's a curated list of the most popular searches for tourist attractions in Brazil. And if I were to click on any of those links along the top, it would reformat the page so that Ipanema might appear on the right-hand side. So a much easier way. This also works for things like movies with Tom Cruise, or dog breeds, or kings of England. Okay, so you get a sense that we're continually building out the types of things that really require more than one answer. So we've also adapted some of our answers to be more relevant when we're thinking about specific vertical experiences. For example, with shopping, or with flights, or with hotels. And we've created these very specific experiences using the information that we get from our partners that is much more structured in nature. So we have things like pricing and availability, things that are much better at answering a query about Paris hotels than is just 10 blue links. So we work with our partners to get that information in there, and this structured data is something that I'll refer to again later because I think it's really important about where the future is going. So that's some examples of how we're doing on answering questions, but let's talk about anticipating. How are we better anticipating user needs? So one of my favorite developments over the past few years addresses this topic specifically. And you might know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Google Now. How many people here are familiar with Google Now? About a quarter of you. So Google Now is a free service that's available for your mobile devices or tablet. And it creates cards proactively based on things that you might find useful. So it's kind of tapped into your calendar and your interests and your G+ circles so that it can assemble some relevant information that you might find useful. So for example, when I landed in Sao Paulo, it turned on my phone. It was presented with the time back home, the currency conversion to the Brazilian real, driving directions to my hotel, as well as a translation feature from English to Portuguese, which I really need. And then lastly, it had a reminder that it was my colleague Matt's birthday. So very simple, but really helpful. I have earned so many extra points with my friends for being good at remembering birthdays through Google Now. So you can see that there's lots of applications here for travel, but let me show you a specific one that we've launched earlier this year with some participating airlines.
With Google Now, you have just the right information at just the right time, before you even ask. And now, with the boarding pass card, traveling has never been so easy. Check in online as usual, and Google Now will automatically retrieve your digital boarding pass, so it's ready before you fly, with terminal information, gate number, and seat. You don't have to do a thing. Just arrive at the airport and you're ready. Simply present your QR code at the gate. That's it. No more hassle, no more stress. And when you reach your destination, Google Now shows you everything from directions to your hotel to local restaurants and more, helping you to be a local wherever you go. Traveling made easy with Google Now.
And so kind of back to our list that we were talking about, Google Now is not only an example of anticipating one's needs, but it's also very good at making suggestions. So if, for example, I had a flight, which I do, later today, and it could see that it was at 3 o'clock and the traffic conditions were really bad on the roads on my way from here to the airport. Google Now would create an alert that told me when would be the right time to leave to make my flight on time. So those are all really helpful ways of anticipating what I might need and making suggestions. And while we're talking about flights, let me show you an additional thing that we've done in our Google Flight Search feature. So this is results for San Francisco to Sao Paulo at the end of September. And you'll notice here is a tip that they've started surfacing, which was money savings that could be had if I were to change my dates of travel. So I could save almost $300 if I moved my travel dates by 2 days. So that might be worth considering. So that's a good tip. And it's unintrusive. It's just kind of there if I like it. There's also a variation of this is you can fly out of a different airport that's nearby and save money. Or did you know that there's a nonstop flight out of this other airport that could save you money? The other idea here is the suggestion around best flights. So this is bringing to the top of the results list those flights that are the best trade-offs that we feel between price, duration, and number of stops. So they might not be the cheapest ones, but when you factor in all those things, that's what we think will really help users make a decision. So once you've made a decision, what are we doing to help enable you to take action? There are a few different ways that we can do this. Some are pretty simple. So things like when you're on your mobile device. So this is mobile ads that Sheraton hotels we're doing. And there's two very simple links that we enabled through ad extensions here. One is click to call, super easy. There's a link there, you click it, one click, and you're calling the hotel that you're interested in. The other use case for mobile that's pretty common is needing driving directions when you're on the go. So there's a quick link that shows you where to find that hotel from where you are right now. So those are both very good examples of enabling a user to take action. Sometimes it's a little more involved in working with partners to do so. So let me show you what we've done in the hotels space. So this is an example of finding hotels on Google using our Maps feature. So it takes in that structured availability and pricing information that we talked about earlier. And in this case, I've decided that I want this particular hotel in Sao Paulo. I've found the dates. Yes, I'm decided on this hotel, and now I just want to book it. So I see the providers that are available. I click one of the providers, and instead of getting dropped at their homepage and having to start over, Google is helping by pre-populating all the information that it already gathered to help me on my way. So this is a much more seamless experience than going to the homepage, and it takes out a lot of the friction in the process. So we're really big on removing friction. And there's one area in particular that we'd really like to help users and sellers get better with, which is mobile commerce. Right? So you heard Gerd talking about mobile. You will hear mobile a lot today, but we cannot ignore how quickly this is growing. And the other thing is that mobile commerce is unfortunately still very clunky and difficult today. So what are we doing to try to make mobile commerce easier? We launched a program through our Google Wallet offering called Instant Buy. And I'm going to roll a video in a moment that includes a couple clients talking about this program, including a travel client that you might recognize.
Priceline is responsible for booking vacations, travel, hotels, for giving people their opportunity to get away.
We torture our customers at checkout. We know they're likely on the run or even in a car, and we ask them to fill out 20 fields of information.
You know, I'm on a bus or I'm on the subway and I've got a credit card in one hand. Try typing in a credit card number with one finger.
You've often got these pudgy fingers trying to hit the N, no O. It just is.
It's just not elegant. It's not highly evolved. Somebody may say it's uncivilized.
The dropout rate on mobile is very high. Of 100 people that come into your store, 98 will leave without buying anything.
Up. On the Android platform, now we have an instant buy option where we can use Google's authentication and Google's wallet to simplify the checkout process for our customers.
We're going from this complicated sort of flow of onboarding a customer to something that's very streamlined and simple. Essentially, there's a payment profile through Google Wallet that he's already got, and the whole process is far easier.
There's a button that says Buy with Google Wallet. So one click there, it pulls your information in from the phone, including your credit card and your shipping address. One more click and you're done.
So pretty cool, right? We're seeing lots of interest on the part of clients, but also as a user and someone who wants to buy a mobile phone, I'm very excited about where this will go. So I've run through a bunch of examples of how we better answer, anticipate, suggest, enable. How are we doing on that other frame, which is, are we more relevant? Are we making things easier? Is it ultimately more satisfying? So let's start with relevance. The thing, we made a lot of good progress, right? And you've seen some of the examples that I've already shared showcase that a lot of these things are much more relevant than we've had before. But we've got some work to do. So one area that I think we can do a lot better in is personalization. So I want to feel when I type in results that those results are for me specifically, because I'm going to guess that my needs and my priorities and my interests are different than yours, even if we type in the same exact thing. And right now, we don't do a very good job of figuring out how to encompass that. We've made a few strides, and one of the things I wanted to show you was something that we literally announced in the past couple weeks, which is the ability to use Google almost like your personal assistant, in that you can ask Google on any device about your own stuff. Okay, so as an example, you can ask, when is my flight? Or when is my hotel, where is my hotel reservation? Or when is my dinner reservation this evening? Or things like, when is my package arriving? What am I doing on Friday? And how about my Brazil photos? Can you show me those? So this is if you're a signed-in Google user and you get some control and there's safety mechanisms so only you get your results. But this gets a lot closer to that notion of Jarvis being able to tell me what's going on in my life. So that's one element that we can get better at. Another element where I think we can get much better is with reviews. So these are some of my friends that I know and trust in my Google circles. But I also want to know what people like me, who I might not know, who are similar. In my case, maybe people with young kids who have similar travel habits. I'd like to understand what they think versus someone in a different demographic who's traveling solo, what have you. But in addition, I also appreciate the efforts of the professionals out there who make their living going out and critically looking at options. I want to look at the totality of this input and experience to formulate my opinion. And when I make a decision or when I'm processing these results, I also want to have a bit more control and customization and fine-tuning, right? It's kind of like having dials because it varies from situation to situation. One time I might be doing a trip with my kids and the next time a romantic getaway with my husband. And so if I'm out with maybe I'm looking at the same destination or like a beach destination in both cases, but it's very likely that the amenities I'm interested in are going to be different. And the budget, I'm sorry kids, but mommy and daddy are getting away and we're going to splurge because we really need a break. So I'm going to slide that budget a little higher when I'm traveling with my husband for our anniversary. So all this level of control is really important. And I want to emphasize that point about price and budget. So price is important almost always, right? You always want to know how much something costs before you pull a trigger. But it's not the full story, and it's not always the most important one either. It's a component. And what we really want to move forward more towards is value comparison, taking in the totality of all those factors in this situation and deciding this is the particular choice for me, and it's not always the lowest price option. So that's a little bit about how we're making things relevant. Let's talk about how we're making things easier. So let's talk about this from the frame of devices. Or interaction, right, or engagement with Google. One of the things that I think has made life easier is instant search, especially if you're a poor typist, right? So if you start typing in Google now, not Google now, but Google today, you will start to get results after only a few keystrokes. It often completes your thought, sometimes better than what you were thinking. You couldn't quite figure out what was it I was going to ask again, and there it comes. So this is fast, lightning fast, and it makes things easier. And if you're not a good typist, you probably like this option. Another option you might prefer is voice search, right? So now voice commands have been around for a few years now. They're not that new anymore. But the work that we've been doing lately is on making that conversation more natural. So remember Tony Stark talking to Jarvis? It was just a conversation. He calls him buddy. So we're not quite there yet, but we have made some good advancements. I want to take you through an example. I don't have any fancy recordings, but let me play along with me here. So if I were to ask Google over, click that little microphone icon and say, in what museum is Renoir's painting Pink and Blue? And Google would come back and say, it's at the Sao Paulo Museum of Art. And if I just simply asked, how far is it from here? Google would know that it meant the Sao Paulo Museum of Art, and here was where I'm physically standing right now. And it would bring back results showing the directions from here to the Sao Paulo Museum of Art, and it's about 6 kilometers away. So that's the kind of more natural interaction, which is really difficult, actually. It's part of that kind of artificial intelligence and making things more natural and conversational that Gerd was talking about earlier. And Moto X is the product that our sister company Motorola launched just August 1st of this year. And they take it a step further because there's no clicking the microphone involved. You just have to talk to it.
Okay, Google now. Note to self. Buy more coffee.
Saving note.
Okay, Google now. Wake me up in 20 minutes.
Setting alarm.
That phone is also really fun because you can design it. You can pick your color and some of the other features that go with it. So we're very excited about that new launch. Here we go. And I would be remiss in talking about devices if I didn't talk about Google Glass. But you saw a whole video about how cool it is and what it can do earlier. So I'm just going to focus on one new feature that literally launched earlier this week. And it's called Field Trip. Okay, so this is like having a tour guide on your shoulder as you're out walking around. So no more fumbling for your tour book while you're walking around the streets of Rome to figure out what kind of building you're looking at. If you have Field Trip enabled, you can just look up and it'll tell you what you're looking at and some important facts. And you can even ask it to talk out loud if you'd like. So this is really going to change the game, particularly in travel, and make it so much easier for people to get out and explore. Now, there's also ways that you can do this in your own hometown, right? You could just wear this as you walk into a new neighborhood and find out where the bars and restaurants are and things that might meet your needs. So let's go back to our list for a moment and talk about the last one. And I said that this was the most important one, the one that ultimately shows whether you've been doing a good job or not. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, except to say that we are obsessed with trying to satisfy our users. And we know that this is an ongoing quest. And we're going to need to continue to do more work as consumer expectations continue to rise. And so my question for you is, has your company done enough to prepare itself for when those consumer expectations will rise into that Jarvis-like state? And more importantly, have you done enough today to remain relevant to the users that are already with you today? And I'm going to leave you with 3 pieces of advice that I think will make that a little bit easier. Some things that are practical for not only staying relevant today, but preparing yourself for the future. So the first one is is about a device, and it's not the fancy Google Glass, and it's not contact lenses or all these more fantastical things. It's something that is already mainstream today. You've heard it dozens of times. It's mobile, right? And I'm amazed at how pervasive mobile is and how badly most people do it, right? Companies have just not been very good at adapting to mobile, and your users are suffering, and they won't tolerate it for much longer. So my advice for you is get good at mobile, all right? Start figuring out your user use cases for mobile and streamline things and just make that work. So really take a look. I'm going to show you again the example from Sheridan, right? Click to call, and then click to the directions. That's simple and beautiful and easy and relevant. You also want to start thinking about your mobile commerce. I'm guessing that Avinash might talk about this a little bit later as well. But you really want to be able to figure out mobile. Getting good at mobile now will prepare you for a Jarvis-like future. It's very similar. Everyone is going to be on the go. Getting good at mobile now will help you later. The second thing I want to suggest is simplify your experience everywhere. Okay? Users no longer have the patience to wade through your sites and your mess that you've put up there. So think about what's happened now with things like mobile devices and tablets, right? They're much smaller screens. You do a lot of sliding. There's just not a lot of room on that screen, so you have to make the most of it. And what's happening are people are getting so used to that smaller screen and the device and that kind of navigation that when they go to your desktop site or any of your sites, they expect that same level of simplicity. So go back and look at your experiences and think about it. I'm going to show you one company in the travel space who I think does this very well. Do folks here know Airbnb? You know that name? Yeah. This is their desktop site. But clearly it was inspired by tablet. It's simple, it's uncluttered, it's beautiful, it's focused on what you want to do when you go there. Right? So take a note from their book on how easy they make this look. And the point is, I know that travel is complex. I've been in this business for 15 plus years at this point. So behind the scenes, you can do those complicated algorithms, but whatever you put in front of your users has to be simple. It just has to work. So think about that user experience on the other side. And I'm going to say my third suggestion is a bit more related to the behind the scenes. So not the user experience directly, but the kind of information that feeds a good user experience. And I'm talking about data. And I'm specifically talking about data feeds. Okay, I mentioned all those vertical specific experiences earlier. We were getting price and availability and product attributes and all those things. My prediction is that in the next little bit, couple years, if not sooner, that the majority of your campaigns that you manage with Google will be through data feeds. Because so my advice is invest in your data feeds. Get good at understanding this. Now, we are investing on our side. We clearly have work to do to make this easier to work with us on the data side. We are investing. You need to do your part as well. Do not miss this trend. This is where things are going. Okay, so you need to understand that we're moving away kind of as a society, kind of away from text ads that are based on keywords to things like products that match user needs. Okay, so this is a type of ad that is live today in the shopping environment. Okay, so you're going to want to think about that type of experience going forward, not only with Google, but kind of across the board. So you want to invest in these data feeds, these pipes as I call them. You want to make sure they're well maintained. You want to make sure that they are updated and so forth. And again, we're investing on our side, invest on your side. So I want to sum up then with my advice for you. When you go into your 2014 planning, or if not sooner, add this checklist to the things that you should do for 2014. Because I'm here to say, I promise you, that if you get good at these things now, if you accomplish this now, you will be much better prepared for the world of Jarvis. Obrigada.